Today we're going to break down the absolutely intricate, super high-yield physiology of the female reproductive cycle. How exactly does estrogen manage to both inhibit and stimulate the exact same system depending on the day? But stick with me, because by the end of this explainer, you're going to understand exactly how this biological switch gets flipped. Okay, Section 1, the HPO Axis Overview. The whole menstrual cycle is fundamentally a constant conversation between your brain and your reproductive organs. The hypothalamus and the anterior pituitary act as the true masterminds, basically directing the ovaries from afar. Now, before puberty, this system is pretty quiet. But once puberty hits, this command center wakes up and starts issuing orders in a very specific pulsatile rhythm. And it's just a brilliant top-down cascade. You've got the hypothalamus secreting gonadotropin-releasing hormone, GnRH, in these distinct pulses. Those pulses travel right through the portal blood to the anterior pituitary, and that triggers the release of follicle-stimulating hormone, FSH, and luteinizing hormone, LH. Then, those two hormones travel all the way down to the ovaries, basically knocking on the door of the follicles and telling them, hey, get to work producing estrogen and progesterone.
Section 2, the follicular phase feedback loop.
Okay, let's look at the first 14 days of an average 28-day cycle, which we call the follicular phase. This phase is all about preparation, and honestly, competition among the ovarian follicles. Keeping the chronological timeline in your head is essential. Day 1 is the first day of menstrual bleeding, day 14 is ovulation, and day 28 wraps the whole thing up. But, it's the invisible feedback loops driving these exact dates that are actually going to be tested on your exams. During this first half, the ovary is busy preparing an egg, and simultaneously, the uterus is building up its lining, transitioning from the menstrual phase right into the proliferative phase.
For about the first 10 days, FSH stimulates the granulosa cells of those growing follicles to produce aromatase, an enzyme that helps manufacture estrogen. But here's the trick. At this early stage, the follicles are only putting out low, steady levels of estrogen. And this low level acts as a strict negative feedback loop. It travels back up to the pituitary and basically says, hey, slow down on the LH and FSH. So the brake is firmly engaged, keeping hormone levels relatively stable while the follicles slowly mature.
But here is your absolute high-yield takeaway. Out of all those growing follicles, one emerges as the dominant follicle. It develops the most FSH receptors and just starts pumping out massive amounts of estrogen. And as blood estrogen levels climb super high, the switch flips. Estrogen suddenly becomes a positive feedback signal. It makes the pituitary highly responsive to GnRH, effectively slamming that physiological gas pedal straight to the floor.
Section 3. The ovulation hormone surge.
That crazy sudden flip to positive feedback triggers the most dramatic event of the whole cycle. All that stored up energy in the pituitary gland is about to be completely unleashed. The anterior pituitary just dumps a massive surge of luteinizing hormone, or LH. It's literally like a biological party popper going off. This LH surge usually hits a day or two before ovulation, and it forces that dominant follicle to rupture, releasing the oocyte directly into the fallopian tube.
You are definitely going to want to mentally file away these differences for your board prep, because contrasting the estrogen-driven follicular phase against the progesterone-heavy luteal phase is absolutely vital. Notice how the follicular phase is ruled by estrogen and features that super tricky positive feedback flip, whereas the luteal phase, it's ruled by progesterone and operates in a strictly negative feedback environment.
Section 4. Luteal phase and progesterone.
Following ovulation, we cross into the second half of our cycle, the luteal phase. The egg is now floating down the fallopian tube, hopefully looking to meet some sperm, while the ovary itself undergoes this massive structural change. What's actually super fascinating here is that the empty follicle doesn't just die right away. After that party popper goes off, that collapsed shell transforms into a brand new temporary endocrine gland called the corpus luteum. It essentially keeps the entire system running by churning out very specific hormones.
This corpus luteum pumps out progesterone, which is, without a doubt, the undisputed king of the luteal phase. Progesterone effectively says later homie to the ovaries by clamping down incredibly hard on GnRH. Along with another hormone called inhibin, which specifically suppresses FSH, this strict negative feedback ensures absolutely no new eggs are matured. Meanwhile, progesterone is working overtime, making the uterine endometrium thick, highly vascularized, and coiled. It's entering the secretory phase to prepare a plush bed for a potential baby.
Section 5. If fertilization does not occur.
So what actually happens to these hormone levels if that released egg never meets a sperm within its short optimal window? Well, that thick, nutrient-rich endometrium, which acts as a highly specialized baby condo, is metabolically super expensive for the body to maintain. It relies entirely on a continuous supply of progesterone and estrogen from the corpus luteum to just stay intact.
Now, if an egg is fertilized, the resulting embryo releases human chorionic gonadotrophin, or HCG, which rescues the corpus luteum. But if there's no fertilization, there's no HCG. Without it, the corpus luteum has a lifespan of just about 14 days before it degenerates into a non-functional scar, the corpus albicans. Once that happens, the hormone factory shuts down. Progesterone and estrogen levels completely crash. Without those hormones maintaining the lining, the spiral arteries collapse, the endometrium sheds, and we experience a withdrawal bleed. Crucially, that massive drop in hormones removes the negative feedback on the brain, allowing GnRH, FSH, and LH to naturally rise again, resetting the entire 28-day clock.
Section 6. How hormonal contraceptives work.
Let's move to our final clinical correlation and see how all of this builds your understanding of pharmacology. Because honestly, once you understand the natural feedback loop, understanding birth control is incredibly straightforward. Birth control pills, rings, or patches essentially hijack this natural system. By providing continuous levels of synthetic estrogen and progesterone, they trick the brain into thinking you are permanently stuck in a luteal phase. The hypothalamus and pituitary are locked in a state of strict, constant negative feedback. They never get the signal to spike GnRH, which means that massive LH party popper surge, it never happens. And without an LH surge, ovulation is physically impossible. You've effectively paused the biological clock using the body's very own braking system.
Keep these visual loops locked in your mind's eye, trust the underlying physiology, and I will see you in the next explainer.